that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Halo Expanded Universe. I need a weapon, and today I have for you the Fall of Reach by Eric Nylund. This is, for all intents and purposes, for those of you who are Star Wars Expanded Universe fans, the Thrawn trilogy to Halo. Like, the difference is that the Star Wars Expanded Universe had stories before the Thrawn trilogy, but that's what really tethered it. That's like what stories moving forward, kind of use that as its basis, especially if it was post episode 6. That was kind of like the mold, the threshold, the connecting tissue. This was released before the game, along with no, I think it was just this, and then after this, the game came out, and then there was a novelization of the game by William C. Ditz, which we'll talk about later. But this precedes the game. This came out first. And I'll say this. It's very easy to read. The prose are very simple. They're not particularly... I don't want to be rude. It's just not very sophisticated either. It's very simple. This is no like Game of Thrones or anything, or it's a very simple way of telling the story, but it's very good. The other issue with this is that one of the points of contention with the Halo universe is that when Bungie was in charge of their game, I mean, it's their game, they created it, the entire studio, they're right. But the games are the most important priority to them. So the novels didn't matter. It was something they allowed because money, but wasn't something they cared about. So we had, I've talked about Contact Harvest, which was written by Joseph Staten. And he already wrote, he writes for the Halo games, all 3 of them. Then we had the Cold Protocol, which was written later. And that just connects more things. But like, when Halo Reach came out, it was 2010, and this book was already a decade old at this point. This is the updated, like, 2019 version, so, but regardless, it came out first, but the Bungie people were like, well, we want to tell the story of Reach, so piss off if we contradict anything. 343, when they took on the rights, would later try to adjust that and fix that as best they could. And there's a lot of band-aids that you got to do there. And there's a fantastic video by Halo Canon on YouTube that you can watch that pretty much, for me, ties up most of those threads. But it is still kind of an issue sometimes if you really think about it. So you just kind of have to accept it. But the thing with 343 is people don't like their games nearly as much as the Bungie games, because the Bungie games are masterpieces. But they care about the lore more. They care about the expanded universe more. So, I feel like there's a good middle ground that could have been found there that was not found. The other thing, too, is this is very much an origin story for Master Chief, more so than the story of Reach. This is, if you're a Star Wars Expanded Universe fan, if you remember the Republic Commando book, Order 66, where the last, 60 pages had anything to do with the title of the novel, that's this book. Only the last chunk of it has anything to do with the Fall of Reach anyway. The rest of it is all an origin story for Master Chief, backgrounds on the world and universe. I'm doing this all in chronological order because I want to experience it that way. But if you really want to get into the Halo universe, just first off the bat, without, having really play the games or anything, and you're like, do I want to invest in the Master Chief Collection on Steam or something, or Xbox? Do I want to go through all those games? Start with this book. I think it will give you exactly what you need to know, exactly whether or not you'll be interested in it or not. It's a really good read, though. It's not, like I said, the writing's very simple, but I think it gets across everything you need to get pretty well, and I like the story of Master Chief. I like all the background information we got on the UNSC, on the Covenant War, on the insurrectionists, on the Spartan 2 program, which, another thing I'll say, which is a negative toward Eric Nylund on this book, is that it's very briefly touched on, and it is addressed as problematic, but ultimately it's all hand-waved away as, well, it's for the greater good. Well, it's for the greater good. Well, it's for the greater good. Because the backstory to this is that there are insurrectionists, which is basically the Star Wars story of the Empire versus the Rebellion. But in this case, the Rebellion is actually bad. Like, they may have the right goals, maybe, if you want to argue that, but their methods are a lot more ruthless than, like, the Star Wars Rebels would be. But it's a similar kind of dichotomy. Like, the legal government, which is the UNSC, and people that don't like having to be under the control and rebelling against the system, but they actually do kill a lot of civilians and stuff. Kind of a more realistic, what Star Wars would probably be if it wasn't so optimistic, you know. Because for every Leia Organa, there'd be like a, I don't know what an apt comparison is, a Ram Coda or something. For all of you who aren't Star Wars fans, you're not understanding any of this. It doesn't matter, or it does matter. The point is, it's a lot more gray of an issue. And it's getting worse and worse, and more people are dying, and they need a solution. So the government gives complete and utter access and control and the right to kidnap 75 children. Because in the past, they tried to make super soldiers, you know, like Captain America from Marvel, or Hulk, I guess, and they try to use adults. Sergeant Johnson, one of the best side characters in the Halo games, is one of them, but it didn't do exactly what they wanted. It was only partially the case that it did what it wanted. And so, hold on. But through Dr. Halsey, who is a very important character in the lore too, figures out that the best candidates would be children. So they steal 75 children, replace them with clones that will die within the next couple years to 6 months. So that way the parents are none the wiser, and they train these kids till they're 15. Then they get them augmented. And after those augmentations, only 30 kids survive. Well, 30 kids become Spartans. Another dozen are maimed and seriously injured for life, and the rest are dead. And Dr. Halsey, again, this is another case of Eric addresses it, but doesn't fully commit to this either. Which is, yeah, Dr. Halsey, she's okay with this. She doubts herself, she questions herself. At the end of the day, she's doing it for the greater good. And you can't put this all on Dr. Halsey either, because it was definitely government sanctioned. This is something the government knew about and funded. And it was still the case that even if Dr. Halsey refused, they would have found somebody else less capable, which kind of made her justify it. Somebody less capable could have done the same procedure and had more children die, as opposed to having her 30 Spartans. So, it is a gray issue that's kind of hand-waved away, and other authors, especially Karen Travis, would go more in depth about the morality of this entire matter. But it was luckily a moral deus ex machina shows up, as the Polygon video said, and with the Covenant, and makes it so any grayness can be swept aside in order to fight this great threat. And so it is what it is. And we get to learn about John's upbringing, about his friends in the military, and the fight against Covenant, up until Reach falls, which leads to the events of the first Halo game. This is a great precursor if you're going to start playing the games. And, without spoilers, I think it's worth your time. I think it's a novel worth checking out if you want to get into the Halo expanded universe. I mean, every book, in some way, shape, or form, has been etched, has been shaped, has been influenced by this story. Every story that precedes this, outside of Halo Reach the game, has been influenced by this. If you get into the expanded universe, from a Troy Denning book, to a Karen Traviss book, to Kelly Gay, to any other author, you're going to see these imprints in those stories. So definitely a must-read if you're going to get into the Halo lore. But that's pretty much it for non-spoilers. I'm going to get into spoilers. So if you don't want any, time to go buy yourself a copy. Yeah. So, warned you. I'm going to talk about stuff now. If you don't want that, bail. Or you're stupid. Or you just don't care about spoilers, and that's okay too. Stick around. So, Keyes ain't a snitch. We actually begin the story with Miranda, or not Miranda, with Catherine Halsey and Keyes. Now, with Halo Reach, like complete or special edition or something or another, there came a booklet which was called Halsey's Journal, which went more in detail and tried to actually help fix some of the contradictions. But one thing that this book hints at, but it is deliberately stated in Halsey's Journal, is that there's a sort of attraction between the two of them, and they do eventually form a sort of relationship and do have sexual relations, because Miranda Keyes in Halo 2 and 3 is Catherine's child. And the ramifications of that will be talked about down the line. But they're doing the special assignment to go look for children. And I actually talked about this a little bit ago with the boot camp comic, which was basically just an adaptation of this. But I'm talking about it again here, because she picks Keyes because he's not a snitch. It really shows the character of Keyes, that his commanding officer did something, and he didn't necessarily agree with it, but he also wasn't going to tell on him. So he got demoted and stuff. Or promoted, sorry. And despite the fact that he thought he was going to get demoted. But he goes on this mission with her, and they meet this kid named John. And we get this famous coin toss scene, which is actually pretty cool. And kind of a running motif is John being the main character of the franchise. He's not the strongest Spartan. He's not the most skilled Spartan. He is the luckiest of them all. Which is something that Cortana would reissue or restate at the beginning of Halo 3, which talks about, do you know why I chose you? And we get that the whole thing about luck. So it's kind of nice that that's all kind of tied in there. And of course, I already addressed the kidnapping children, which just, yeah. We get to meet this character named Chief Mendes. He's really cool, trains these kids. We'll see him more in another book down the line. But one thing he teaches John, because John's all about winning. As like a 6-year-old boy, if he wins, he knows he's the best. That's what matters. So they do this obstacle course, and he has this team of 2, Sam and Kelly. But he races to the finish line. But they lose because he didn't help his team get there. So you don't win if the rest of your team loses, is something he learns. They go on this other mission, or training mission, and John manages to get everyone home. Because he learned, you don't win if the rest of your team loses. Like I said, we do get a bit of nuance with Halsey, but again, it's just so hand-waved away, it's not really an issue, because it's for the greater good. But Halsey does regret what she has to do, but she perseveres through it, because she believes it's the right thing to do, despite the fact that she feels terrible about it. Later on, we have an ODST encounter where John sees them, and ODSTs are hell jumpers. They are orbital drop troopers. They follow the ship in like a drop pod, follow the floor, get to action, and they're like the best of the best in the entire Navy until the Spartans exist. But he beats them all to a bloody pulp, which is a good reason why a lot of ODSTs don't like Spartans. And I'm jumping around a lot because there's a lot of time jumps. But there was actually a point in this book, I was surprised about it, where John actually starts to contemplate, because they like kill a bunch of humans for this insurrectionist base, but a bunch of them were just like janitors and like people living there that weren't necessarily, like, they didn't have guns on them or anything, they were just living there. Other people in the complex had guns, but they didn't. And they shot first, asked questions later, and the entire compound all dead, regardless if they fired on them or not, or had a weapon. And John's like, are we doing the right thing? But it's okay, because as the Polygon video states, a moral deus ex machina, because soon after that the Covenant show up, and now it doesn't matter, because big threat, good, evil, don't have to think about it too much. So he started to have a little bit of nuance in his perspective, but that was quickly dropped when the Covenant arrived. They go on another mission, and Sam, one of the Spartans, dies. It's the first time that John's had to deal with a teammate dying. So, and this is also addressed in one of the Troy Denning prequel books, Silent Storm, I think. Also just get a lot of keys being awesome, which is great, because he won't be around after the next story. I have to again make another reference to the Polygon video, which is Polygon is a YouTube channel which he made a video on, at the time, all the current Halo novels, and it's a great video. But again, some of the examples of the simple writing in this book, John felt safest, and I'm paraphrasing, on his home reach. His home would not fall. Uh-oh, John. But it's okay. We also get introduced to a character named Ackerson, who is an Oni person. Now, for those of you who watch Halo Season 2, he's also in that, for those of you who care about that. And then we get introduced to Cortana, which is quite interesting. One thing to note that is a little weird. Cortana is based off of Halsey's mind. Basically, Cortana is a younger version of Halsey. Now, Cortana finds Master Chief somewhat attractive, which means so does Dr. Halsey. Which by this point he's an adult, but still, considering she's basically his mother, that's a little bit of a Freudian nightmare if I've ever heard of one, but okay. We also learn about smart AIs versus dumb AIs. Now, obviously dumb AIs aren't dumb, otherwise why would you use them? But dumb AIs are restricted heavily on what they're actually able to do, whereas Cortana is a smart AI, which means she basically has no limits. And it is smart AIs because of their no limits, that they eventually get to a point where they have processed so much and their mind has used up so much data that they can't contain all of it, and it starts to break them. Hence AI rampancy. Dumb AIs don't have those issues. But after 7 years, it will lead to the mind literally being overwhelmed. Which, again, this is in Contact Harvest, this is in here, this is also in Cold Protocol. All of the Bungie eras set this up. So anybody that gets upset with 343 for going that direction with Cortana, we could talk about execution, but this is literally the only logical path to go after 3. Also, dumb AIs aren't based off of brains, but smart AIs have to be. So that's why she's based off of Halsey. And if you find Cortana attractive, you basically find Catherine Halsey attractive because they're basically the same person. So near the end of the book, one of the plans that is issued is, well, what if we capture a Covenant prophet and force them to make like peace with us? So that's kind of like what they plan on doing, but then Reach happens. Cortana also vows to protect Chief above everything else, which makes Catherine Halsey okay with her choosing Master Chief as the person to have the chip piece for her. Also, just want to note, it takes 342 pages before Reach, the story of Reach, becomes a thing. Also, something I didn't remember, Chief fights above Reach, like in space, near the end. So it doesn't really mess with Halo Reach that much. John also has no idea about the fate of his men, if any of them survived or not. He believes he's kind of the last Spartan, as it seems like in Halo, the game. But we'll learn in First Strike that that's not the case, but we'll talk about that after Halo 1. And then the back of it, like after the story is like over, there's a little bit of these addendum things, which I think were added for the later versions, but it talks about the winter contingency, so, which is a thing in Halo Reach, the game. So, still, there's some minor stuff here that are contradictions with the game, but it is what it is. Overall, again, I think the story's fantastic. I think it's well worth your time, and hope you check it out. Anyway, up next, The Flood by William C. Ditz, which is just the story of Halo and Halo CE in a short story. But we'll talk about that in the next video. Let's finish the fight.